Unrealistic expectations. But first, let me fast forward. This really needs to be clarified because I was 17 when I got married. And so there's a huge difference in being 17 versus being 27. So it's not like I knew what the heck I was doing. you know, that's probably not a common occurrence.
Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. I am so excited to have Verlyn here with us, and we're all about just learning more about marriages, thriving in our singleness, and then also learning more about what it actually looks like to be in relation with someone else. So, without further ado, Verlyn, before we get into all the things, I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself and what brings you to the Holistic Sister Circle.
Okay, thank you for having me, first of all. I really appreciate that. Verlyn is a woman who loves life. I love all things love, marriage, logic, relationships. I love beaches and books. And primarily, my goal is to see women happily married and thriving in marriages. I am a mother and a wife of almost 20 years. I have four grandchildren and five children. And I am a writer, a podcaster. Again, I'm all things love and logic. And that's what we are here to talk about today. I'm simple. I am a coach. I do want to put that out there. I am a premarital slash relationship coach. Yes.
I love this. We're going to have some fun. So, if you have not already, make sure you take out a pen, paper, and just tune in with us because this is going to be such a incredible topic. So, Verlyn, before we really get deep into some of the questions that I have for you today, I would love for you to share a little bit about just your journey through marriage. Like, what did that look like for you? You and your husband have been married for 20 years. Um, how was that process? And how did you decide that you actually wanted to put the skin in the game to do what you needed to do to ensure that you were even chosen to be a wife?
Well, let me say this first. I have a combined total of about 35 years of marriage. I was married initially very young at 17. What do you know at 17, right? and so, and then I was divorced at in my mid 30s. And at that point, I really was not sure if I would get another shot at love. And so my story is that I did not have anything against the institution of marriage, even though I was divorced, right? And so I did want to remarry, but I did not think it was possible because I knew so many other women who had not married a first time. So I certainly didn't think that I would get to do it twice. Okay, so fast forward working through those years between, as a child, it was a given. Like the mindset was, you just got married. So it wasn't even a thing of if, it was more or less when. And initially, it didn't pan out the way I thought life would pan out. But this time, going around again, um, I took lessons from the first time of the mistakes I made, which were many. I own that, right? That's one of the first things you have to do. If you're ever talking to someone who has gotten out of a relationship or out of a marriage and you say, well, what happened? What was your part? And they say, oh, no, nothing. Red flag, right? First thing you have to do, in my opinion, for a marriage to fail, it takes two. Even if you don't do anything, and I know I'm getting off topic, but even if you don't do anything directly, you have to be able to look at any part that you had and own it. Okay. And so after going through that process and wanting to be married again, I mean, my husband and I met at work, right? Which is kind of pretty common. And he was also divorced. And so you had two people coming out of marriages saying, okay, this is what we learned. Let's see if we can make this work, a second time. And you work through your issues and you work through going through the honeymoon phase, right, which does not last forever. And then you get to the, I will call the nuts and bolts of it, the effort that it takes to work on a relationship, to take two people and try to combine two different visions, two different personalities. And so we put in the work, we put in the effort. And while it has not been perfect, and I'm not perfect, and he's not perfect, but we're perfect for each other. And that's what matters. We are all flawed. And to be able to accept those flaws and work again, putting in that effort to take it one day at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 year at a time, to get to the point where we can say, okay, we've been together over 20 years, we've been married almost 20. It takes effort. And if anybody says, oh, no, we're just great, it's been perfect after 21 or 20 years, I would wonder about that because marriage is effort. It is not something you just breeze through because, we're just in love. It's a lot more to it than love. And so that's what I'll say about that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like there's so much to unpack from what you just shared. In general, the first thing that I was thinking, well, one, I didn't know that this was your second marriage, so this was new information for me, and I think it's really helpful for our audience as well because we do have several women who are faithful in their singleness. We have some who have been in long-term relationships but they haven't been married yet, and then we also have some who they maybe they were married before and now they feel like, again, like you were saying, the road for them, they're just not sure if they're going to get a second chance. So I really want to talk about all three, honestly, and just really getting your perspective on some of the things that you learned and some things that you feel like the audience can really benefit from. So starting off with your first marriage, what were some things in that particular marriage that you learned that you would love to just share with our ladies who may be looking for, they're looking for their Boaz or their husband right now, and they just want to make sure that they at least work on these things. Like, what would some of those things be?
Unrealistic expectations. But first, let me fast forward. This really needs to be clarified because I was 17 when I got married. And so there's a huge difference in being 17 versus being 27. So it's not like I knew what the heck I was doing. you know, that's probably not a common occurrence. You don't meet many people that say, hey, I was married at 17, right? Maybe 19 or 20, but not 17. And so right off the top, I mean, clearly in this Western culture, there's not a 17-year-old that I know of that is mature enough to be married, right? To get married and stay married. We're not in a culture that really teaches, okay, this is a role of a wife. And I know all this is subjective, whatever it looks like in your household, right? This is a role of a husband. You just find these things happen and you get married and you're kind of like, okay, what do we do now? And so that's the first thing. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea who I was. I didn't have an idea about much of anything, right? And so if I want to fast forward until I got maybe in my 20s and made some discoveries, first of all, that it was a mistake. I had unrealistic expectations, like I said before. Watching TV, and I saw what I thought were healthy marriages, and that's what I wanted to emulate. But again, there's no experience at 17 for the most part that you can say, okay, I'm well prepared. Like I understand what it means to be a wife. And so I had unrealistic expectations of what a husband looked like and what a wife looked like. I had no understanding. And so really to maybe fast forward towards maybe my mid 20s, I thought that getting married would just be all right. We got married, we're going to live out this fantasy life. And it did not work that way. The unrealistic expectations were that I thought, first of all, he would change. And that is huge. Even though, again, I didn't have a lot of understanding. Um, Getting married at 17, again, if I were 27, I might be able to have a little more clarity because I would have known a lot more that would make sense. A lot of that, I mean, it just didn't make sense. And so, um, what I would say is, in terms of unrealistic expectations, it usually means that we want the person to act like we want them to be, no matter how it is that they are or who they are. And we expect that this magically happens. And what I've learned is people only change when they want to change, right? And even if someone changes for you, usually one of two things happen. They're going to have some regrets down the road, and they're going to blame you and say, well, I wanted to do or be such and such, and it's your fault, right? That I did this. And they're going to revert back to their behavior. Or if they don't do the thing that you asked them, or they change, or whatever it is, they're going to resent you, right? For living a life that's not authentic. And so that's a huge thing, expecting that a person is going to change because you're in their life. There's a saying, I don't know where I heard it before, but it says, a man persuaded against his will is of the same opinion still, meaning that they may change for you just to keep the peace, but authentically, they are still back in whatever that was. And so, the first thing I would say, I would not suggest that anyone get married young, and take the time, at least until you're close to 30, to know who you are, because you don't know who you want until you first know who you are. Core values are very important. And so if you marry young before you've even really established and tweaked what it is you want in life, what are your core values? Do you value honesty, integrity, truth? All of these things matter, because if you just marry out of romantic thoughts and kissy face, then you find out that your core values are not aligned. And then you try to get that person to line up to your core values, and then you have chaos. And so that would be one thing that I learned, that the core values were not aligned because I was too young to figure out what they were. I knew what I couldn't and could not do at 17, what my mother said, right? But that wasn't necessarily my core values. And so that was the biggest thing. And again, there was no maturity at 17 and 18 and 19. And then once you put babies in the mix, that's a whole different story. And so that's the long to the short answer of that.
No, it's okay. And I love what you talked about just with core values, because I remember when I was 22, oh gosh, it feels like so long ago. But when I was 22, I actually had my first business. And when I was in that, it was actually with a network marketing company. And one of the things that I really enjoyed during that time were there were a lot of couples that were a part of that particular business. So I would essentially, I'm able to meet men and women who are married on a weekly basis. I could see how they think, how they act, how they connect with others. And one of the things that I learned were actually how to honestly establish my core values, just being around like minded people. And these were people that I had, not all of them, right, were married. Some of them were, again, in their singleness as well, just like me. There were others who had been married for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And having them in the room on a weekly basis was very big for me, and it really impacted just how I, honestly, I love the way that they looked at their husbands. I love the way that they just had this feminine approach to them, even though they were still very accessible when it came to whatever questions you have. Yes, like, we'll answer your questions, but we'll also want to make sure that we're respectful. So anyway, with that being said, one of the things that you talked about specifically with core values is, what are some ways that you feel like have honestly helped you determine what those are. Because what I've noticed is, even I have, girlfriends who are in the same boat as well. Sometimes you don't know who you are unless you're around certain environments. And now you can say, oh, okay, I like these things or I don't. So if you're not in those particular environments, and like you were saying, you're just coming from, your mom's house and now you're trying to figure life out on your own, you don't really know what you don't know. So I would love to know from you. I know in that position or that situation that I was in, I was able to see what I liked and what I didn't like on a weekly basis for years. I would say for like 3.5 years, when I was doing network marketing at that time, and we were in person, and this was before COVID. So this was completely different from how I grew up, because my parents divorced when I was 9, and I never actually saw them in a healthy way that I can remember. So when I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, like I want that," and I was able to figure out like what those values looked like for me in that setting. So I would love to know for you, yeah, what were some things that you would think women should look for?
I was in the same boat. My parents separated when I was 4. And so I didn't see it in my house either. Where I did see it was in my church every week. We were in church every Sunday, every Thursday. And so that's where I saw couples. And I'm pretty sure this is where my initial thing for love and marriage and seeing people happy stemmed from, because I did see what looked like healthy marriages. I had a few friends when I visited their home. They had both their parents, and I saw how they interacted, and it looked like it was supposed to be happy and healthy. And I always wanted it for my mom, even though my parents were separated. So yeah, I did not see it played out in my home. I saw it played out in my church, which is why I said it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. It was just people came to church as couples and they got married. Or there was a man in the church and he found somebody, she came to church and they got married. Like that was the norm, to see men and women together and they looked happy. And so that's why I wanted that. And I wanted to see everybody else do the same. Like that was my mindset when I was young. And so, as far as core values, I can't say I didn't have them established at 17. What I realized is I didn't know what they were. I didn't put a name with it. I had values. Like, I understood what integrity was. Not the thing that you do when everybody's looking, but it's the things that you do when no one's looking, right? I understood that it took a mom and dad to raise a family. That was what I was taught a family was. Those things I understood. I just did not put, like I said, a title. I didn't know they were core values. I thought they were more or less, this is what I believe, this is what I've been taught, this is how we live. And so I did not put that title probably until my 30s. And so when I say our core values were not aligned, it's because I didn't know, first of all, I didn't understand that again. And again, at 17, you don't know. But as I began to get older, I realized that, yes, honesty was important to me. I realized integrity was important to me. I realized family was important to me. Having two parents in a home, to me, was family, and that was a core value. I understood that I wanted to be a productive member of society. I did not want to go to jail. I didn't want to break the law, right? So that was a core value. Stay out of prison, right? Stay free. Keep myself out of trouble. I'm an only child, to my knowledge. And so one of the things I learned was I was going to get caught. It was no, I'm going to blame him or her. I was in the house by myself. And so I knew that I wanted to stay out of trouble. And so when I say core values, as I began to understand, oh, that is a core value, right? And then list them. And then the second time, I realized it was important that we believe the same things. Okay, so remarrying, I wanted to remarry a man who had already been a husband and who understood this is what husbands do. I didn't want to start all over with somebody who didn't, who had not a clue, who was coming right out of being single and just had a whole different idea of what a husband looked like. And so that was one of the things. We both had been married. We both understood that, hey, we made certain mistakes and this is what we don't want to do. Okay. And this is what we want to do. So peace is a core value, like living in peace. I don't want to deal with a bunch of drama. I don't want to deal with being combative. I do believe in confronting, which are two different things, right? You confront so that you can take care of things, but I'm not coming fighting to be combative. And so that's a core value, being able to have peace in life, okay? Being able to be who I am. These are things that I learned later on. Again, I don't even know if you know who you are in your 20s. I think I did not come into the beginning of understanding that until I got in my 30s. And at that point, I realized that peace was important. And where I was at that time, there was not peace. And I don't do shade to anybody in the past or anything like that. But at some point, I had to get my life back. And it was some situations that put me in that frame of mind, and I did. And again, moving forward, what I realized this time I'm going to pay attention, you know, 17 and how old was I I think I was 37 when we got married, something like that. That's a huge difference. Being a 17-year-old young lady teenager and being a 37-year-old woman, it's a huge transformation between that time. And of course, you're able to use more logic, and you're in a position where you can think through things better. Not saying that I did everything perfectly, but I had a much better idea of what was going on at 37 than I did at 17. And so even when I'm talking to women who've been divorced, and I'm hearing this a lot, which I made a pivot in terms of pre-marriage versus what I'm doing now, which is listening to what I'm hearing women say, I don't feel seen when I'm out. Men don't approach me, and I don't feel attractive like I used to, especially after a breakup or divorce. And so it's like I'm laser focused on that. Before it was kind of like pre marriage, but I'm like, you know what? If women are not even getting engaged, how are we even going to have these conversations? Right? If you're not even dating, we can't talk about being a wife. And so that's why I've been pivoting. And my message now is, because this is what I hear, there are no good men out there. It's not enough good men out there. And I'm like, you know what? You're not the Marines. You're not looking for a few good men. You're just looking for one good man, right? I don't know if you're even old enough to remember the commercial that said the Marines were looking for a few good men. But
No,
that's
I
what they.
remember. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, you're not the Marines, right? You don't need a few of them. You just need one, right?
You just need one.
Just
And
one. And they say it's over 8 billion people on the earth. You ought to be able to, it's one out there for you, right? And so that's what I am. I'm laser
yeah.
focused on that now.
And I appreciate you bringing that up too, because like I was saying, I have several friends who are single, beautiful women. And the biggest thing that I hear too with them as well is either there's not enough good men, or the men that are good, they don't want, or they don't feel like they're attractive, or they feel like, they just have better experiences talking to the girls or women. Every time a man comes around, it's hard to look at them in the eye, it's hard to be confident. So all of these things are, I think, again, go back to, once you identify what your core values are, and then you're practicing them on a consistent basis, and you're living up to whatever that expectation is that you have of yourself, that in itself provides the confidence and the self-esteem that you need, so when you are attracting this person, you at least align somewhere and you can have a decent conversation. Now, for the men and and women, I know you talked a little bit about just changing your focus, and how can we talk about marriage when we're not even dating? What would be just some advice that you would give someone who's listening, who is honestly in that boat? Like I said, I have a just in general, I have a lot of women just in my network that are like, they are in that boat. And one of my friends, I'm not going to say her name or anything, I'm not going to put her out there, but
You better not.
she is, she's over 30. I think she's what, 32 now? And she's a virgin. And she was saying that a lot of the men that she meets on these dating apps and, out and about and things like that, as soon as they hear that, they don't want a second date with her. They don't want to have that next conversation. And I was sharing with her, a lot of these men that you're finding on these dating apps, one, your man's probably not there. Like that's a slim picking. So, it would make more sense for you to go in an environment or go to an environment where that's actually practiced, like a church home. And she was like, well, my church home now, it's filled with a bunch of single women. So there's not even really many men that even go to church like they used to. So I would just love to get your advice on that too, just as you're kind of transitioning in this space. What would be some advice that you would give, to our ladies that are in that situation?
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to say is this, reiterate. It's a mindset shift, first of all. We would be hard pressed to think of anything that has been accomplished that did not include serious thought and planning, right? Whether it's a job, a business, relationships, taking classes. And in my opinion, a lot of the view we have of marriage and relationships is through the lens of love and feelings, and it should just happen. We're in a whole different, I mean, it's a whole different time. Men are not approaching women like they used to for whatever reason. The Me Too movement, they don't want to be accused of some, you know, ratchetness, right? And then you have the fact that it's so many of us to choose from. So they feel like, hey, you come get me, right? And so it's just a different, it's not simplistic like it used to be. You see a person, how are you? Here's my number, want to hook up, whatever. Now, like you say, you got apps. You had the 19, the C-19 movement where everybody was banned from being out and about. So then everybody's looking down on the phone. So you can't even make eye contact with the people. We've gone from having a conversation to sending an emoji. Like it used to be, you have a conversation, then you go on your phone and you type a sentence in a text. Now you don't even have to say, I'm having a great day. You just hit a smiley face, right? And so communication skills have changed. And I'm setting a preface for this. So there are so many changes that have happened. So if we as women don't understand that you're going to have to put forth a little more effort to be found, we're cooked. The times just since 10 years ago have changed dramatically and drastically. I was going to make one word, dramatically. So we have to understand love is not going to fall in our lap anymore. And the chances of it being online, I'm not going to say none. I would say slim to none, but it has happened. And so some of the things we have to do, first of all, understand things are very different and you're going to have to move differently. So that's the first change in mind. The other mindset, of course, like I said, to get out of the scarcity mindset that there aren't enough men. Nope, all you need is one, right? And you will have what you believe. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're focused on, if you're saying these men are no good, it's not enough good men, all the good men are taken, all of these things, then that is what you are drawing. This is my opinion, scientific proof, but I can't really tell you I got it from this book or whatever. Thoughts attract. When you are positive, you get positive results. If you are in a circle and all women do are talk bad about men and say the same mantra, they aren't there, where are the men? No, it's some effort. You got to change your environment. First off, that's the environment of your mind. Secondly, you hit upon this, and I say this all the time. If you are going to a church where you have 10,000 members and 15 of them are men and half of them are married, you might want to rethink where you're going. And that might be your family church from when you were 5. But hello, if the men aren't there, you might want to reevaluate. Go to a different Bible study. Work yourself around. We don't even necessarily want to move around like we used to outside of the city. Definitely not outside of the state. It's so much. I'm literally working on a program right now where I'm going to be coaching and putting this process into actionable steps to teach women. It's no way we can have this conversation, right? But this, I will say this, you got to look at your attitude, which your thought process, mindset, appearance. That's a whole book, all right? Our appearance from just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was a child, we dressed with dignity, we dressed with class. I don't see it now. I see women's out here with these flip flops, flip flappity around in the grocery store. And this is not a shot against head wraps, like deliberate, this is my style head wrap. I'm talking about these sleep bonnets, right? That you just be slapping on your head because I'm going to the grocery store. You know, I literally have seen women in pajamas. Like I'm like, what is this? What like and no offense to anyone listening, but this is the bottom line. If you are looking to be a wife, to be seen, to be noticed, you have to dress the part. You got to put these sweatpants to the side. Save that for your gardening, whatever else. Feminine is in, right? The sloppy look is out. The I want to be comfortable. We went from class to being comfortable to I just don't even care anymore. You're going to attract what you are. If you want a yo boy, then, dress like you don't care about yourself. Men are visual. And I try to get women to understand that. Well, my character, well, my money, they don't see that. When a man sees a woman, he doesn't see your degrees. He doesn't see your net worth. He doesn't even see your pedigree. He doesn't see your character. He sees a picture, a vision of whatever it is. If it's loveliness, he sees your physical. And while that may not be the focus, it is the initial attraction. And we can't work around that. There's no way around that. You can't say, well, he better accept me the way I am. And I got, a piece of stuff around my head and I don't smell that great. And I got these flip flops on and I got one pair of eyelashes and the other one's missing. What? You know what I'm saying? Or either you got them snuffleupagus eyelashes. Appearance matters. There's no way around that. And if you want to be noticed and seen, you've got to get that together. You got to get it all the way together. And I'm not saying that you got to be made up 100%, but I tell you what, when I thought, and I wasn't sure, I was like, I don't know if I ever get married again. I got 2 children, got divorced, I don't have a high paying job. Guess what I did know how to do? I knew how to fix myself up. And I knew every time I walked out the house, I was tight, right? I did not let myself get all unhealthy. And how do I say this politically correct? I kept my body tight, right? I didn't want to be sloppy, okay? And just all over the place, bouncing. I understood for me, first of all, I wanted to look good for me. That was always a habit I had. My hair was done, and I don't mean I was spending hundreds of dollars at the salon. I was doing my hair. I was making sure it was washed and clean and styled, whatever that looked like. It could have been a curly bush, but it was styled. I made sure that I didn't have cracked heels and cracked lips, right? I had my earrings. I smelled good. It didn't matter if I was going to the post office just to put a letter in the mail. I was tight. I made sure I had on real shoes, right? Grown women's shoes, not flip flops, hitting up against that annoying sound of the heel and the shoe and having a strap and not putting the strap on, right? The strap is there to hold the heel in place. Like all of these things that you would say are nitpicking, I made sure I did. I always had myself together so that my appearance for me made me feel good. And because I felt good, well, because I looked good, I felt good. And I had the confidence. And let me tell you, I had children, I was divorced, I was broke, I didn't have a great paying job. But there's one thing I always knew how to get a good man. And that's because I followed formulas. My appearance, I had a good attitude. I wore a smile. That's the prettiest thing you can wear, right? How you look, it says whether or not you're approachable. So I had a smile. I looked good. I knew how to have a good conversation, right? I didn't think that every time somebody looked at me, they wanted to marry me. And I put myself in atmospheres where men were. And I didn't hang around in big, large groups of women, five and six, talking loud about how stupid men were and how dumb their man was and who did what. No, I was maybe with one woman, two at the most. And we all liked men. We were not, I was never part of the man hating club, right? And so your appearance, your attitude, and atmosphere. Now, I can't possibly go into all of it in depth. I just hit upon a little bit of it, but those are the things you have to consider. Attitude, what vibe are you giving off? Are you giving off you're desperate? Are you giving off you're tired and don't like men? Are you giving off all men are dogs because mine cheated on me? Like, those are vibes that you give off. And all these areas have to be looked at. Are you even in the mindset of a wife? Or are you still showing up as a yo girl? Like you in them streets. These are things you have to evaluate. And so that's what I would say. Really look at yourself. Sit in the quiet and think about where you're hanging out, who you're hanging out with, how you're looking when you're out, what you're thinking about when you're out. And again, remember, all you need is one. You just want one good man. You don't have to have a smorgasbord. I know we all want to pick and choose. And I think that this other myth, high value man myth, right? Six figures, 6 feet, six pack, whatever it is, miss me with that. You better find somebody with good character that knows how to work with their hands and fix some stuff, right? Somebody that's going to treat you the way you deserve to be treated. All of this money, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying go for broke either. I'm just saying don't let that be a disqualifier. You disqualify a good guy because he's not 6 feet. Here you are, 5'3", talking about you need somebody 6'2". What? Get real. You know what I mean? Some things we do to ourselves because we see, again, physical matters. You should have some level of attraction. But let me tell you, the game is changing. You might have to, rethink what attraction is because if that brother's a good man and he knows what a husband does, and maybe he doesn't have everything physically that you want, you better think past the we got to have butterflies and chemistry. You better get over the chemistry and think about character. Think about core values, those things that really matter, so that you are not limiting what's already in your mind as limited. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And I want to add to this too, because like you were talking about just the the women who only want to focus on the men who have the six figures and things like that. I think a big thing with this is too is I read, shout out to Darren Hardy, but when I was in my early 20s, in that network marketing business, we would practice self development and personal growth. And one of the things that we had to do was to read anywhere between like 4 to 5 books a month. And one of those books was on personal development. And the author of this book is, his name is Darren Hardy. And the book was called The Compound Effect. And inside of that book, we talk a lot about just everything that you're doing, no matter what it is, it compounds over time. And there was a section in the book where he talks about how he met his wife. And he said, prior to meeting her, I wrote down, he was like, I was very specific. And I wrote down everything that I wanted in my partner. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and asked, am I currently this person? Because at the end of the day, you're going to attract who you are in that moment. And if you're someone who has low self-esteem, who doesn't, feel good about themselves, who doesn't dress well, who doesn't look the part when they go out, all these different things, they play a part into who you're actually going to get, if anyone. So that really stuck with me because I honestly carried that through. And I know even for me too, one of the, I have so, so many different friends in different stages and phases, but to the whole height thing, it's like, okay, am I 6 feet? Like, I am not. So let's like, okay, maybe we leave him for the tall girls. And I'm okay with having someone that is my height or maybe even a little bit shorter. And even for me, my husband, when I put on heels, I'm a little taller than him. But that's okay because his character, all of the other things, when we talk about core values, we've aligned on it. We've aligned on for years. And when I met him, I was at the peak of my personal growth, of my success internally. I was very, very particular about how I was treating myself, how I was, putting thoughts in my brain. I wanted to make sure too that, just like to your point, I didn't want to spend my time around just women talking about how bad men were. Like I needed to get environments where men were in those environments so I could learn from them and I could connect with them and I could ask questions. Because to be honest with you, single women will just keep you single. It's just what it is, especially if they're in a position where they have this negative approach or negative perspective around when it comes to men. And I grew up in that environment for years. And I was like, okay, something has to change. I have to do something different. So I just, I share all that to say that for women who are out there who are maybe thinking, man, this may seem like a lot of work. Um, Anything that you do in life requires work. Okay. And you need to compete. And I don't know. I feel like we just kind of lost our stride through that in general. Like most women don't feel like they need to compete. Most women feel like, just because even some may just look the part and they think that's enough. But no, it's not. And it starts with the looks. But you also, like you were saying, smile, having a good attitude, being respectful, not always feeling like you have to be in control because you don't. You have no idea where these conversations can lead and how they can go. But when you're in the room, like flow in that room and show who you are and why you deserve to be there. Because it's either you or that lady next to you. So anyway, I was like, oh, let me share this because I think this is so important. I've had friends tell me too, like, oh my gosh, Fear, like that's so much work. Um, well, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Like I don't know what to say. But whatever you do in life, you're going to have to compete for it. You're going to have to show up and you're going to have to show up with the expectation that you're going to win. So
And to your point, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of effort. I will say this: if you're not willing to put in the effort to get the man, you surely won't have the effort to keep him. It's effort that never lets up. You know what I mean? So if you already know, I want to get married, I want a man. No, if you already know you don't even want to put forth the effort needed to be attractive, right? It's twice as much effort to keep that going. Okay. It does not end. Okay, I got him. Now I can just let myself go. No. So rethink whether or not you really want to be somebody's wife, right? Because it's not just, I want to be married. You're going to be somebody's wife. That is a role, that is a job. And so if you're not willing to get the job, you're not going to keep the job. And that's really, we have to look at it. That's why I said it's logic. It's not this romanticism. I just want to be married. No, wife is a title just like CEO or any other title in a corporation. You got to do what you have to do. You have a role that you have to play. It would be nice to just be a wife and sit there and have money drop in your lap and have shopping sprees and soft life and all that. I get it. However, you still have a responsibility. And that's what we miss, right? Because we romanticize marriage, not understand that it is upkeep, it is effort, it is a role, it is responsibility. It's not just a day that you go and you put on a pretty dress and you have a dance and eat yummy wedding cake. No, that's only the start. And unfortunately, we put a lot of effort, money, time into that day, right? And that's really, I did my first podcast. Do you really want to be married or do you just want to have a wedding? Because if you just want to have a wedding, heck, you can go to your best friend's backyard and just pretend, put on a fancy dress, eat some cake, and call it a day. But being married is a job, it is a responsibility. And rethink that. Lots of women say, I want to be married. I want to be. Do you want to be a wife? That's my. Do you want to be a wife? Do you know what a wife does? What does that entail? The man that you want to be your dream man, again, are you the dream woman? You want a dream husband? Are you a dream wife? Or you just having some dreams and just waiting for stuff to happen? It's a lot. And these are the conversations that I'm having, right? What is it that you really want? Do you just want a wedding day to show your girlfriends you got married? Or do you want the responsibility and the role of being a wife? Okay, if you check the yes box, I want to be a wife. Well, this is the effort you have to put into getting into that position. And then this is what you have to do to maintain it. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah. So, so true. And what comes to my mind too is just the famous quote of, to whom much is given, much is required.
Hmm.
So when you're no longer just focusing on yourself, you have more responsibility, whether it's your business, whether it's your children, whether it's your husband. You all have different roles that we have to play. And if you have the honor of having those roles and you want to keep them once you get them, then yes, there were you have to level up all the time. I'm literally, even now, Verlyn, just so, I'm sharing this with you too, but I'm still looking at different ways to level up. I'm learning because I'm in a step parent environment, right? So I'm looking at, how do I become a better step parent? How do I become a better wife? How do I, what are some things that even I can learn from you from a premarital standpoint that maybe I need to bring into my marriage? Like, I'm always looking to learn and to grow. And when you don't do that and you're stagnant, again, this is not just with marriage. This is with any role that you decide to take on. Um, the very thing that you wanted, you lose just from that. So I certainly appreciate you sharing your mindset with us, your thoughts, just all the things that you learned over the years in both of your marriages. I really appreciate it. For those who want to just connect with you further, what does that process look like? Tell us more about how we can join your program, and yes, how we can find you online, all the things.
Okay, can I say one other thing that
Yeah.
you made pop up? You used the word honor. People who have ladies who have the honor of being in this role. That's not a word that you hear very often.
Mm,
And truly, it is an honor. Marriage is honorable. And we need to get back to that frame of mind of
mm,
being honorable. When something is honorable, you understand that you have to work for it. It's not just
mm.
given to you. All right. So I really love that you use that word. I didn't want to
Thank you.
get past that. In terms of reaching me, easy. VerlynTarleton.com. That's V as in Victor, ERLYN, T like Thomas, ARLTON.com. All the ways that I can be reached are there, whether it's Gmail or whatever. I'm working on my program right now. Currently, I have like a couples vision board template so that if you're engaged or even just to figure out what it is that you want, you can use this template, talk about where you want to live, what are your core values? Do you want children? If so, how many? Those types of things. And I have some other freebies on my website. So, yes, that's the best way to reach me, berlintarleton.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Until next time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.